Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Common Language. This week's episode will be focused on Project 2025. We're going to give an update as to where the Trump agenda is in regards to the grand plan and what that could mean for us going forward. So, first, let's note that today is October 17th, and Mac is going to give us our top line and tea for this week. So, let's hear it, Mac.
Thanks, Case. Yes, today is the 17th, and also we are 17 days into the government shutdown, which started at the top of the month. So, where are we now with the government shutdown? Essentially, last week we saw OMB roll out its RIFs, its reduction in force, and a court temporarily blocked these efforts, saying that it is illegal. This involves about 4,000 staffers who were impacted by the RIFs across 8 different agencies. And despite this ruling saying that the firing of these 4,000 staffers was illegal, the Trump administration has insisted that they will continue to do even more layoffs, about 10,000, they note. So while that is all battling out in court, there is also still no clear path for reopening the government. Negotiations have essentially stalled, with Trump circumventing parts of the government shutdown to pay for things that he wants to keep open and not paying for things that he doesn't want to keep open. So it doesn't even really feel like a full shutdown. So it's anyone's guess about how long this will continue. Our second item today is about the new Pentagon press policy. So, the Department of Defense released new rules for press credentials for journalists, and these new rules ask correspondents to not gather information that the Pentagon has not okayed on, that they not have not given them access to release. And it also limits their ability to move independently throughout the Pentagon, like the physical building itself. Secretary Hegseth has said that this is in an effort to modernize security protocol. However, many news outlets are saying it's actually impeding on their First Amendment rights. And as a result, a lot of reporters have turned in their press passes, and this mass exodus will have profound impacts on the coverage of the Department of Defense. And wrapping up with our third item, yesterday, John Bolton, he was Trump's previous national security advisor under Trump 1, has officially been indicted. He faces 8 counts of transmission of national defense information and 10 counts of retention of national defense information. This is somewhat a similar situation to James Comey, who we covered in another top line episode. Similar to Comey, there's been a lot of beef between Bolton and Trump since the first administration. And Bolton is also insisting that this is another example of Trump weaponizing the Department of Justice.
Wild. I will note on the Bolton piece, this investigation has been going on for years. So, although the timing feels ominous and connected to some of the issues he's had with his other adversaries, I do feel like this one has a bit more substance in terms of the meat and bones of what they could actually prosecute, but we'll see. And just another day in the courts of the United States of America. Okay, Project 2025. So, first, we're going to break into our vocab section. This week, what is a political party platform? A political party platform is a formal statement of a party's official policy positions on a wide range of issues, adopted at a national convention. So, the platform serves to inform the public about the party's principles and goals. And the Democratic and Republican parties, which are the two major parties in the US, both released their national platforms for the 2024 election. So, Project 2025 was not the GOP's official party platform, just to note. You may remember Trump denouncing Project 2025 in many of his speeches. However, Project 2025, aka the Mandate for Leadership, the Conservative Promise, is a nearly 1,000-page document that was written by the Heritage Foundation, which is a conservative think tank that really serves as a playbook with broad ideology framework and also some direct policy directives for the far right. And major themes of this political agenda outlined in the report include dismantling the administrative state slash bureaucracy. They love to use that word, the bureaucrats attacking them. Dismantling DEI slash woke propaganda, eradicating legal protections for LGBTQ+, decreasing economic engagement with China, increasing defense and border security, and most notably, consolidating power under the president slash executive branch. So this document was published way ahead of the 2024 election. And as we've discussed before on this podcast, especially on our last episode where we break down Kamala's book, talking specifically about the election, the Republicans are organized. The Republicans have a plan, and this Project 2025 is the result of that plan. Really, the fruit of their labor in this way. Project 2025 is the conservative movement's unified effort to be ready for the next conservative administration to govern. And for them, that was Trump as president, and he's like their figure for this piece, but in theory, it could have been anyone who's open to that agenda. So the document was published ahead of the 2024 election in April of 2023 and is widely viewed as the blueprint for their political agenda. Why might this be the case, and what are their supporters arguing here? And this was taken from the Project 2025 tracker, which is a collaboration of brilliant minds on the internet who have been tracking this progress of Project 2025 and where the administration is standing in terms of all of its components and objectives. So, supporters argue that it provides clear and actionable plans for what they call efficient governance, super vague, restores, quote, traditional conservative values, and reduces bureaucratic efficiency and government overreach. Additionally, it strengthens the executive authority to implement unified policies. So, they're banking on the fact that this is going to be something that enhances conservative values and strengthens the executive branch to have their message be more widespread. On the other hand, critics warn that it threatens democratic institutions and checks and balances by giving too much power to the executive branch and other policies. It politicizes the civil service and law enforcement, a lot of which we are already seeing. It imposes extreme social policies that limit individual rights. Again, a lot of things we're already seeing. And it risks undermining essential government programs and protections. So we're going to get into a little bit more, but I'm going to pass it over to Mac to continue to paint this picture for us.
All right. So thanks for setting those foundations for us, Case. To fill in some color as far as the political landscape in which Project 2025 exists, we have to back up to the 2024 election because, as you gave us a window into, the report really picked up steam during the 2024 election. That's when people really started to pay attention to it. It was published in April of 2023, but on the campaign trail in 2024, Trump explicitly denied any association or even awareness of the report even existing. He really tried to separate himself from the report. And I think in part that was because, one, it truly was not the official party platform, right? The GOP did release their official party platform, and that is also available on the web if you want to look at that. But also at the time during the 2024 election, it was getting a lot of backlash, particularly for its more extreme far-right viewpoints. So Trump said, quote, "I know nothing about Project 2025. I have no idea who is behind it." And he even said during the campaign trail himself that the plan was, quote, "seriously extreme," and was conceived by people who were on, quote, "the severe right." Times have changed. Flash forward to today. And Trump actually recently, for the first time, really acknowledged the existence of the report. And he did so when he was praising Russ Vogt and all of his efforts to shut down the government and leverage the shutdown of the government in favor of other policy priorities that this administration has. And he acknowledged Vogt as someone from the Project 2025 fame. When Reporters asked Trump about this when they said, "Oh, you are aware of this report now?" Their spokesperson did not directly respond. And I think what's interesting is as the first year of Trump's presidency has unfolded, many organizations have tracked the implementation of Project 2025. This includes organizations like the Center for Progress Reform, the Legal Defense Fund, LDF, and this Project 2025 tracker, which was started by a couple of Reddit users, and I think is one of the more like robust trackers online. And basically, it breaks down the Project 2025 into 318 distinct policy objectives. And according to the analysis of this tracker and many other trackers, people are suggesting that the Trump administration has successfully implemented about half of its objectives. The Project 2025 tracker estimates that in total, 119 of the 318 objectives have been completed, and about 66 are in progress. So that accounts for about 48% of the agenda. That paints a picture
Yeah.
of where we are at with Project 2025 and how successful the Trump administration has been. What do you think, Case? Like, vibes plus data considered, do you feel like the Trump administration has been successful or unsuccessful in implementing the agenda of Project 2025?
I think based on the roller coaster that we've been on with this administration and the bulldozing effect that they have had in terms of demolishing federal organizations, taking down USAID, removing lots of boundaries and protections for healthcare and for just in general, like democracy and progress. Yes, I think that this is clearly their plan, and I think that they're clearly actioning on it. Even when I was referencing to what critics were warning when Project 2025 was first being thrown around, we really have politicized the civil service and law enforcement. Let's look at what's happening in our big democratic cities right now. Like all of a sudden, Trump wants to put the National Guard everywhere and make the military a homegrown, like, experience, and that's never been the case, risking undermining essential government programs and protections. We have a president who is consolidating as much power as he can, putting through as many executive orders as he can, all while having control of the House and Senate. So I do feel that the agenda of Project 2025 is definitely in effect. I also think that they couldn't have asked for a better player to be involved in this, such as Trump and the way that the Republicans are acting as of late. In past Republican administrations, pre-Trump, there was a lot more civility between the party. And since Trump won, we have seen that divide getting larger and larger. I was listening to Caitlin Collins interviewing Bernie and AOC yesterday, and then there was a question from the audience in which someone asked, given this government shutdown, when we talk about healthcare and the cuts, the states that are going to be disproportionately affected by this are Republican states and largely Republicans. Basically, why do you care what happens to them? And AOC had really strong messaging saying, we're all Americans. So, unlike our current president, I'm here to protect everyone. I don't care if you're MAGA. I want you to have health care. I don't care if you voted for me. I want you to have health care. And the divide that has now been established is because Trump can get up there and stand up and say, if you didn't vote for me, if you didn't support me, like, then I am not your president. That's the messaging that he has shared time and time again, even at the Charlie Kirk
Mhm.
Memorial. He's over there saying, I hate my enemies. And I think that Project 2025 is effective because we have a leader who is willing to do whatever he can to establish that ultimate power. And he has no vested interest in really anybody who's not supporting him. So, because Project 2025 was created by largely a lot of people who work for him now, I think that it has been like an easy playbook for him. It's like they're telling him how to do his job lightly. And at first he was like denying it, but now this is the plan. And I just see it as an acknowledgement from him that he's willing to put these divides in place and keep them there for the greater good of the people who support him.
Yeah, I think that's what's interesting too. I believe it's 140 of Trump one alumni contributed to this report. And most notably, one of the key figures that contributed to the report that's now playing a big role in this administration is Russ Vought. I think that overall, they have been very successful in implementing Project 2025. And I think we can look at examples like Doge, right? Immediately, Doge is now a noun and a verb.
Yeah.
Doged everyone. And as we saw in Project 2025, and as we keep talking about, one of the underlying frameworks and objectives of this is to get rid of the bureaucracy of the civil servants, of the federal government itself, absent the executive branch. So Doge, that was like week what? Week two? It was so early on in the presidency, they stood up and just started eliminating agencies, capacity, staff, and that serves their purpose of accomplishing their goal to expand and consolidate power under the executive branch. And they've been successful in doing that because they have a figure like Trump who is very interested in having power.
Yep.
And that's not to say other presidents have not been interested in having power. But I think the extent to which Trump really pursues and thrives off of power is clear to everyone. I don't even think that he would deny that
And
himself.
it's disproportionate to any other president that we've had in the past. At the end of the day, being a president is a position of power, period, done. But it's how people decide to leverage it that influences the greater piece.
Yes. And there's a couple of different good examples of this. And one of them you said, Case, was USAID. If you look at the tracker, they have completed every single goal. And what that means is that they have eliminated the entire agency and all of the work that they do. 100% A plus. Moving on to things like climate, right? There was a lot of anti-climate protection policies laid out. There was actually, in fact, in Project 2025, they advocated for expanding oil and gas and mining in places like Alaska. And we saw in the big piece of reconciliation legislation that was passed this summer, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, all of the tax credit incentives being rolled back. Again, very successful. So they're using legislation, they're using executive orders, they're using a figurehead who does not ask for permission. All that to say is the proof is in the pudding. If
Yeah.
we look at these trackers, which again, shout out to all the people doing the tracking because it is very tedious. And
Yes.
I strongly encourage, and I'm sure we're going to link the sources in our notes, strongly encourage people to go on the different trackers and see exactly line by line what the objectives are, how the administration has implemented it, and where they are in terms of its progress of it being completed or not. We named a couple of them out there, but thank you to the people doing the Lord's work
Yes.
out there on the internet tracking this. And yeah, my answer, they have been extremely successful. And I will end by saying on this point, and by saying that what blows my mind is how fast
Hmm.
they have done this, how we are, and that's why we're talking about this now. It's so scary to say, but we're about to close out 2025. We're nearing the end of the first year of his presidency, and they've completed half of this agenda. Insane.
Yeah. Especially considering that the government is shut down right now. And
People are saying that it's the government being shut down is helping to accelerate their ability to accomplish a lot of their objectives, which
believe to be
again, proof is
true.
in the pudding.
Yeah.
They're doing more layoffs. They're only paying for the things that they want to pay for.
Yep. And when you are looking at the tracker, it's super clear what their priorities were from the start. So, one thing that we also talked about is DEI. It's like, how many times have we talked about DEI, wokeness? It's like they're a broken record with these two phrases. And DEI was one of the first things to go, like, scratch from every
Mhm.
single government website, scratch from all these big companies if you want our funding. They're being extremely targeted with the objective and how it needs to be realized, and there is no wiggle room. So I do also think that makes it just even that much easier to see how clear their agenda is and how clear their plan to continue this agenda is, because they're not backpedaling on anything and they're not taking any shortcuts.
Yeah, the DEI point is super interesting too, because the way that they've gone about this is basically said if you are advancing any DE&I efforts, programming, policies, you're not in compliance with this administration's priority and you are out of compliance
You
essentially,
will be
right?
punished,
Right.
essentially. Yeah.
You right. And they've made it clear. I think that's another thing I heard AOC talking about too is they're very clear about what they want to do. There is no mincing of words. There are no euphemisms. There are no like subtext here. They're saying, this is what we're going to do. And it reminded me of this Drake lyric that I like to listen to pump myself up, especially when I'm running. And
Yeah.
this song, and he says, said that I would do it, and I did. And I feel like that is the motto for this administration. They said that they were going to do this, and
Yeah.
it's exactly what they're doing.
And this is on the campaign trail. This is exactly the type of stuff that Kamala was talking about when she was referencing Project 2025. She came in and said, this is their plan. This is what they're going to do. A funny part of human nature is that we have to believe it to see it, even if it's in our face. It's that quote, that Maya Angelou quote, when people show you who they are, believe them. And it's that is Project 2025. They showed you the plan. They gave you, like, there was a test and they gave you the answers. And still, we're coming up short.
Yeah, that's what everyone was saying about this election. It was like open book and truly open book. There was an entire playbook, an entire
Mhm.
blueprint for what they said they were going to do. We can talk about why we think they have been so effective. What are the main ingredients driving their success? A lot of the time, these party platforms are fluff pieces.
Right.
It's a lot of vague language. There's not a lot of like direct policies in there. It's just a bunch of woo, if
Mhm.
you will. And while this technically was not the official party platform, it
Right.
was.
Right.
Okay, so let's like stop pretending that it wasn't because it was, it clearly was. And it was effective because unlike the traditional party platforms, it wasn't a bunch of fluff. It wasn't a bunch of pie in the sky. It was like, this is what we're doing because this is how we think the government should operate.
And the Republicans and the whole like Trump denying of it all, that's also just all part of their ruse. This clearly laid out plan. Trump is going to lie until it behooves him, right? So he lied until it behooved him. Now he feels like this plan is working well and they're getting done what they needed to get done. So now he's okay. He's working with Vought and they're like having their own little mission. And so now he's cool with saying it. And as we know, the facts don't play out with someone like him, and it's not relevant to even point them out because at the end of the day, he's going to continue to do whatever it is that he wants to do. But I do think that his tactics of intimidation and really blackmailing people. This is what he does in order to push things along further and farther. And Project 2025 is extremely explicit in what it wants to accomplish in a way that only someone who's that bullish would also be comfortable doing, because we've seen this from the Democrats, right? Like when the shutdown came around this time, Chuck Schumer was really strong and he came down and was like, we need to do it. Like this is what needs to happen. But in the past, Democrats, they're just not as bullish. That's just how it's been. It's why they lost so many votes in the last election. Like people just aren't really feeling like they're stepping up to the plate. Whereas someone like Trump and the Heritage Foundation gave him the platform for him to just jump and take it. And it's like free bait for him because he doesn't really have to overthink too many things and he just has to execute. And I will give it to him. He's a good executor, whether or not, you like him. He executes plans because he doesn't abide by rules and he's not afraid to be criticized. He doesn't like being criticized, but at the end of the day, he still does whatever he needs to do for himself. So when you have someone who is that effective at bulldozing anything, really,
Mhm.
people, places, things, it's going to have a very profound effect. So I'm actually really more curious into to look into see, okay, they've gotten 60% of this plan down, right? Like we've eliminated lots of government funding. They've fired so many people. We talk about Doge again. Like they've totally demolished so many things in our government and also his executive orders and the tariff situation and all of these things. And even thinking about the way that he handled the tariffs with China and how he was pushing and pulling on them, like all of this is in Project 2025. Like it is nuts to see it play out so quickly in real time and to know that we have 3+ years with him still in office. So what's next?
Yes. I feel like what could be coming next, and this has already happened, we've seen it play out at HHS, is the health care stuff. We've seen a lot of provisions in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act that pays for the bill by making lots of cuts to our healthcare systems. And we've seen RFK lead Health and Human Services Agency and where that's going and the different things that they done in terms of the research they put out there and the vaccination policies and the crumbling of the CDC. But I think that's only the beginning. I think there's still more health pieces they want to touch on, specifically abortion. That's something that was a hard line in Project 2025, but I think it's like the trickiest one too, because I don't know where Trump is willing to go on that issue, given the way we saw it impact the midterms last election cycle, giving the Democrats not as much of a loss as people anticipated in the House. But the big takeaway here in terms of how this has shifted the political landscape for the foreseeable future slash in a way that will never be able to be reversed and go back is this whole dismantling of the system. This is talked about in progressive politics as well, right? We have to dismantle these systems. We have to scrap these systems because they're not working. And to your point, Case, I think Democrats have been really scared to like throw the first punch
Right. They
at
don't want to buck the
actually
system.
they want to play by the rules. They don't want to buck the system. But what has been effective with Project 2025 and this administration is that they did throw the first punch of actually dismantling the system that exists, i.e., the federal government itself. And Trump very much understands cash rules everything. If
Yep.
you dry their pockets, if you take away the funding illegally or legally, they're done for. And that's what he's done. And he has pulled away money. He has clawed back money. He has frozen funds. He has hijacked the entire appropriations process. We are 17 days into a government shutdown that has
Mhm.
no clear end in sight.
Right.
He is pulling the purse strings here. And that's what's been so effective. And that's what's really going to change our political landscape for good and have so many implications as to the programs that the government sets up, funds, runs, and executes.
And I think that brings us to a larger, broader idea, which is that in human nature, when you do something the first time, it's really challenging. But then as the precedent changes, as we're seeing so many moments of unprecedented events happening that are no longer going to be unprecedented. So when you
Correct.
start to push the boundaries of that, where's the line anymore? And I do feel like that is the only key component that of the democratic strategy that I do understand is that we do have to be careful of where we start pushing this line because the more comfortable we are with things, the territory can change very quickly, very
Yeah.
fast. The landscape can change very fast. And I think that a lot of what Trump has done is changes and cuts to social programs and things that are meant to benefit everyone and or aid, like we said, USAID, things along the lines that he considers extras. And it's like, what happens when you start taking away those extras? Where do we end up from a humane point of view, from a real grounded point of view, with the idea that all of these things are so unprecedented and morally corrupt in some ways, like how is that changing the flow of our society of, to my earlier point, someone saying, just let the Republicans do what they need to do, and we don't care for anyone anymore. You can say this is a conservative agenda and they want to preserve conservative values, but there's no list of conservative values that is like some kind of like Bible. Like you can call it whatever you want, whatever it's this, it's that. You know what I mean? Again, vague language that then becomes embedded in the fabric of our country and our government and everything is vague and then when there's no clarity it's like who are we, what do we stand for, what does it mean to be American and what are our values as a country and where is the line? It's invisible or it doesn't exist.
Certainly. It's a good kind of time to step back and see where we're at politically and the impacts of a second Trump administration about a year in.
Mhm.
And ultimately, it's that kind of expansion and consolidation of power at the executive branch, too, that is really underlying all of this. Because again, the checks and balances is fundamental to a democracy, and it's ushering some questionable approaches. And as far as are they democratic, are they undemocratic? I don't
Right.
know. We'll see where he goes next. But at the end of the day, they do get an A plus. If we're talking about how successful have they been, they've been very successful. So now I think it's on the Democrats to respond. And right now, I'm not going to weigh in on what that strategy could look like, but clearly the ball is now in their court. And I'll end there.
Yeah, agreed. And I think that if anything, a big takeaway is making sure that the focus and the communication and the foundations have to be really strong in terms of what that political plan is. And I hope that the Democrats learned that lesson from this last election and they get a little more organized because clearly, when you have someone organized and you have a laid out plan, it's clear that in this country it can be applied.
Yeah, got to get your marching orders in place.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So that concludes this episode. We are going to keep tracking this. Again, shout out to the
Hmm.
tracker. Your team is amazing. And we'll see where we go from here. More to come.
In the meantime, feel free to follow us on all of our socials or on any platforms where you can listen to podcasts. And we'll talk to you guys next week. Okay,
Thanks. Bye.
bye.